Why SEO should be a B2B team sport. If you've ever been asked to put on an event at a drop of a hat or to work a bit of marketing magic on the creative equivalent of someone's last will and testament, then that's exactly how your SEO team feels when you ask them to get them ranking high on Google and for anything and everything. Now, whilst it's true that your SEO team has powers similar to Harry Potter, the truth is that your company will get a ton more free traffic and leads if those wizards receive a little help. Now, what I mean by that is that SEO should not be seen as an add-on process or a finishing touch. Rather, if B2B marketers truly embrace SEO as a discipline which everyone is on board with, there are big wins to be had. Now, those wins will be in the form of free traffic and leads, which are there to be had if you adapt your strategy for how you produce content. So this week on the show, we'll be looking into how you can make SEO more of a team sport, as well as to bring you up to speed on the latest developments, along with further insights for where things are heading. Hello, good afternoon. My name's James Rostance, and this is the 414 live and exclusive this Friday afternoon or Friday morning in the US of A, where my guest is today. And it's for you as a professional B2B marketer, whether you work in-house at a company or at an agency, or indeed if you're a company executive with a hands-on role in your company's sales and marketing activities. And each and every week, I speak with some of the greatest and most interesting minds in B2B marketing so that you can directly enhance and expand your professional knowledge with every single episode. So as promised at the beginning of each week now, we're going to be doing a roll call for friends of the show and new subscribers. This week, joining in order of sign up, Duncan Jones, big shout out to you, Paul Cooper, Kaushik Hindoka, Gary Parker, Claire Cooper, Elena Walker, Peter Elgar, Chris Clark, Lee Ebsworth, Lauren Costello-Fox, Chloe Buchanan, Aranda Barkawi, Adam Sweeney, Valentina H, and Marco Novo, Wasim Ansari, and Mr. Jeff Foots. Thank you very much for joining. So if you haven't already, the414.net is the website for all subscription options and for previous episodes. So today on the show then, we'll be diving into the world of SEO as a B2B team sport. And I've got an excellent guest who's made time for us this afternoon and this morning in the US. So joining us live from Park City in Utah, please give a big welcome to Mr. Jeff. Mr. Jeff Atkinson. Hello, sir. How are you?
Good morning, James. Or good afternoon, your time. I'm doing well. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
And Amazon Alexa's joined in the background there. I'll remember to turn that off next time. Sorry, Jeff, I didn't actually hear that when you were saying good morning, but I think you were just saying that you were good to be here and coming on the show. Excellent.
Yes, sir. It's great to be here. Thank you for having me.
There we go.
Modern world for you right there with Alexa chiming in the background. But here we are.
Seriously, every week something happens to throw me off, and this one's today's one. So right, nice, cool. Well, thank you very much for joining. So let's jump straight into it. So first of all, could I just ask, could you clarify and define in your terms how you like to define what is SEO as it stands today?
So SEO today is the same as it's been, throughout time. It's organic rankings, non-paid advertisements. How do you, achieve top rankings to get more traffic and click through? The difference is that the landscape has totally changed. So, for example, 50% of clicks now or 50% of searches result in 0 click, meaning people don't actually end up clicking through to a website. They get the answer right there on Google. So the way that search works is very, very different than it was 5-10 years ago. But the sort of principles and what you're trying to achieve is the same. You're trying to get those top rankings and trying to get, the most traffic you possibly can. It's just a different ball game now in terms of how it works than it was 5 years ago.
I love the 0 click concept. That certainly is not something I would have considered anything up until recently. How long has that been going on,
shocking,
by the
isn't
way?
it?
Yeah. How long has that been a thing, if you don't mind me asking?
So it's been growing as a thing for probably about 5 years, and it's all based on what they call rich enhancements. So
Hmm.
you know how you used to search and you would see, just 10 blue links would come back and you would, happily click through and go on your way. Now the results are very enhanced. Just as you watch your own search activity, those results that are coming back are, if you search for a sports score, the score just shows up. Or if you search for the weather just shows up. So you'll actually notice in your own behavior that this is happening all the time. And those are called rich enhancements. They're powered by a specific language called structured data markup. And it's the way that the search world works now. The other big factor is that voice search is a thing now. So your Alexa there or talking to your phone and Google, those are obviously going to be zero click. So as we move more into this voice activated search world, which more people are getting comfortable with, you'll see that, obviously you're not clicking through a link, you're just getting an answer back. And so that's why, Google's trying to enable this technology and users' behavior so that they just get the answer now versus having to, click through to another website.
Yes, voice is something we covered quite a while ago, which is nicely brewing in the background, though it hasn't taken over everything yet. Well, apart from my show, where do you think we are in terms of voice right now? In
I
terms of
think
yeah.
I think it's really early days. I kind of compare voice search to desktop versus mobile was maybe 5, maybe even longer ago. There was a time, and the reason that I compare it is that the interaction in the early days of mobile, when you had a Trio or a Palm Pilot, I don't know if you ever had one of those, James, but the experience was kind of brutal. It'd take like 30 seconds to a minute for a web page to load. The connection speeds were low, and so people just didn't really use it. And then the technology and the user experience flipped, and it became that you had an iPhone, sites were actually built for mobile, and it became just a lot easier for you to access a website via your phone. And all of a sudden, from 10% of people using, the usage being 90% desktop, 10% mobile, all of a sudden it flipped the opposite way in the course of like a year because all of a sudden it became so easy. I think with voice search, my experience is that the user experience just isn't there yet. So it's easier for me to get the information I want by typing on my phone or typing on my desktop. But at some point, that's going to flip where the user experience with voice search is actually as good as it is hunting and pecking and typing on my phone or on the desktop. And when that happens, I think you'll see a lot more users. It'll sort of be that 90-10 flip again, where all of a sudden voice search will just be the norm. It's just a matter of when that's going to happen and when technology and the user experience will get there. It's also interesting that it's a bit of a level playing field. It's not just Google. You have Amazon with your Alexa and you have Siri with Apple. So there's different technologies really vying for our attention when it comes to voice search. With all other search, it's really just Google.
Nice, thank you. By the way, for everyone watching, if you have a question at any point during the show, please do put it in the comments section, and I'll put it live to Jeff, and we shall pick his brains and get the answer. Shout out this afternoon to Gamdan Alriki and Mr. Pete Hendrick as well. Thank you guys for watching. And Gamdan likes today's topic, by the way, Jeff. He says, actually, what a great topic to talk about. So thank you for that. Yes, I thought it was about time we did something on SEO. And I must admit, I did like scripting that teaser for it, comparing you guys to, wizards, really. And in fact, following on from that, I guess my next question. So could you explain, to put a finer point on it, why is SEO relevant today?
Yeah, I think it's always going to be relevant. It's still, in my opinion, in the B2B space and all B2C as well, it's still the primary channel. So almost
Really?
every purchase at some point is going to touch Google and SEO. And what's interesting is so I come from a B2C background. I was the senior vice president of marketing for a big company here in the United States called Overstock.com. And I see a lot of the way that people transact in the B2B world now getting a little bit more similar to what it was in the B2C world, where most of the sort of 90 or 75 to 90% of the purchase process is happening in a digital relationship. So you're learning from the website, you're learning from all around the web, trying to figure out the right product.
Hmm.
And the sales cycle is getting shorter. And in fact, a lot of our buyers, in particular at Huckabee, they don't really want to talk to us. They just want to transact and they want it to be as easy as possible to get there. So then you're very reliant on SEO because they're doing 90% of the research outside of the sales process. And so if you're not ranking and you're not visible within search results, then you're just not really part of the conversation. And so it becomes, essential, for you to rank for relevant terms in for your brand and what you do. If you're not showing up, you're just not being considered in the purchase process. So that's the behavior that I see happening in the B2B world. Even enterprise CMOs and high level executives are doing a lot of their research via search and getting almost to a buying decision before they even talk to anyone. So that, in my opinion, especially in the B2B space, makes it, extremely relevant today and something that, you have to be focused on in order to be successful.
It strikes me with that level of search going on ahead of a purchase, and as you say, then with people preferring not to, is that how you put it? That people are preferring not to get in contact and to do the searching. Did I get that right?
Right. Yeah, they're doing, if you're interested in buying a piece of enterprise software, they're going 75 to 90% of the way down the path of choosing what they're going to buy and finding the right price and this and that without talking to a human. So they're doing that online, they're searching, they're doing their research, they're looking at review sites, and they're just getting very far down the path without actually, raising their hand and saying, I want to do a phone call with a sales executive.
With you. And with that, well, I was going to say, I guess, no, I guess I know that is something that only marketing can take care of then. And with that, I imagine that sales is relying entirely on marketing departments to cover that, right?
Yeah, we've kind of taken a little bit different approach in that we've combined the two teams. We find that it's so relevant to that marketing is such a big part of sales now that we actually at Huckabee have combined them into one revenue team.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yes, sales, if they are separate organizations, then sales is going to be very reliant on marketing for all that website work in that, call it 75% of the selling process is really in marketing's hands.
Yeah, and I like that we've, I guess, hit this early on because this really ties into the central theme of today's episode that it does need to be a team sport, SEO, for the very
Yeah.
reason that, yeah, you've just now covered. Okay, well, in that case, are there any differences as far as you're concerned for the approach for paid advertising versus optimizing for organic SEO?
Big differences. What's interesting about SEO is if you think of what a marketer does on sort of a day-to-day basis and what marketers are really good at, it's stuff like branding, messaging, managing paid budgets. And SEO is like a totally different hat that a marketer needs to wear. Even if you're a content marketer and you have like a content direction, SEO is reliant on sort of this technical infrastructure of your website and how well does it communicate with search engines, which is a totally different hat to wear than any sort of paid channel. So a paid advertising approach is going to have a lot around, ROI and budgeting. SEO approach is going to be content and then very technical. So how fast does the site load? How well is the navigation architected so that Google can understand it? Is there structured data throughout the site? Those types of things become very important in SEO. And because it's so technical, you're now reliant on engineers or an outsourced solution like Huckabee. It's just a different hat to wear as a marketer than your paid advertising hat. And so oftentimes in organizations, you'll see them be separate because the skill set required to manage really good paid advertising It's just a different skill set of what you have to achieve doing SEO. So it is a different approach, and it's a much longer term approach because paid, you can spend $1 today and get that dollar back almost immediately. With SEO, you're investing today for results you're going to see in 6 to 12 months. So there is a lot more patience required in the approach as well, but it is a bit of a different skill set.
With you. Okay, so what do you find that marketers, would you say, take for granted, often though at their own expense when it comes to SEO?
They take for granted whatever sort of tech stack they're on, such as if they're using WordPress or they're whatever the way that the site is technically being driven and delivering the experience. They take for granted that that's already set up for SEO, and it's not.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Websites are always built for humans, and the UI UX for humans is what we all focus on. We don't think that much about what's the UI UX for Google. Are they getting the information that they need when they come to a website? And that's sort of taken for granted by a lot of marketers. They just say, well, if I do a great job at building this site for humans, then I'm going to do a great job of building it for search engines. And that's just not the case. They're different tasks. And without a site that's built also for Google, you're going to have a lot less humans flowing through that site. So I think focusing on the architecture and the sort of technical infrastructure of SEO, which is something that people don't really like to talk about. It's a technical thing. It's a lot of work. It's expensive having developers work on stuff. That can be, it's a challenging problem. So it's sort of ignored or taken for granted that that's just going to sort of take care of itself. We find a lot of marketers that have great content strategies or are doing a ton of stuff that they think is really good for their SEO. They're not really getting the benefit of it because the site's just clunky. It's hard for Google to understand all the content that they're writing, particularly in B2B world, because in B2C world, like a product is a product and it's easy for Google to understand. In B2B world, products are very complicated. They don't have a product page with a price and a description. And so when Google comes to a B2B site, they're usually kind of confused as to what's going on. And you can really clear that up with some of this technical infrastructure in the website to be able to help them understand. And the more they understand, the more rankings, the more traffic and everything else that you're going to get. But that infrastructure needs to be in place so that you get the benefit of all the content and all the other great things that you're doing for the users and for Google.
I get the feeling that the movie Bill and Ted is partly to blame for perhaps some of the problems here, because when you said that, that famous quote of "build it and they shall come" springs to mind. And
yeah,
maybe that's driving a lot of web content development. Well, Arlette Lee from Aravis Capital is finding this very insightful, by the way. Thank you, Jeff. So that's Arlette Lee. Good afternoon. Thank you.
Thanks, Lee.
You know what? I took a note whilst you were talking then, and you'd mentioned about structured data. I have a feeling that's got something to do with the part that we're missing maybe as marketers. So yeah, we're good at producing the content, but there's, as you said, we need to be able to let Google see that. I'm hamming my way through a question here. Ultimately, what I'd like to get to, what is the answer for making it so that Google can see that content? Or rather, what is it that we as marketers can do better so that our results are, it's reflected in the search results?
Yeah, structured data is an interesting one. It's one that probably a lot of your listeners may never have heard of the name of it before.
Yeah.
Structured data was invented about 10 years ago by search engines. Basically, the way that search engines have been able to understand the internet is by crawling HTML. And HTML is not structured. It's different at different websites. And so it's difficult for them to understand exactly what's going on one page on this site and then what's going on a page on this site because they're just different. Mm-hmm. And structured data is a way to structure it so that it's the same on this site as it is on this site. So it's a language that allows a website to actually authoritatively talk to a search engine. And they can say, this is a product, or this is a book, or this is a person, this is a legal matter. Almost anything that can be seen on a web page can be represented with structured data. And what's interesting about structured data is, one, it does sort of two things. One is it helps them understand. So they come in and they crawl every page. It has great structured data. They're like, thank you. And I now really understand what's happening on each given page. When that happens, you just rank for more stuff and all these great things happen. But two, they use it because it's structured and it's authoritative. They actually can use it within their search results. So as we talked earlier about the rich enhancements, all the new features that are showing up in search results and the zero click, that's all powered by this language. So when they're pulling something into their search result, they're pulling it via structured data. So, theoretically, 50% of the searches, since they're zero click, are being answered via this language, via structured data. So it's become a really important factor that marketers often aren't aware of. It's well known within SEO communities, but some marketers in general just aren't aware of the importance of it, and that you're really at a detriment if you're not providing Google and other search engines with really good structured data. You're just not able to capture the type of results and exposure that a site with structured data would be eligible for. So it's become a very important factor in the SEO space.
I think that's a really important and good point you've made there, because I imagine, that a lot of people certainly are familiar with header tags and
what's metadata?
Metadata. Thank you. Yes, but what you're talking about here. Would I be right in saying so? Approaching SEO from a point of header tags and metadata, that's from 10 years ago, whereas to do it now, we've got to be on top of having structured data. Is that correct?
Yes, it is. Right. Metadata is still somewhat important today, but metadata is really suggestive. So it's saying this page might be about X, Y, and Z. With structured data, it's authoritative. So they really take it seriously and they use it. But structured data is sort of, the 2021 version of metadata. It's the most important sort of the information that you're communicating. It's very important to get your structured data right.
Nice. I feel like we've collectively delivered a bit of a win here for the viewers and listeners, making that point well made.
Yes.
Thank you. Well, in that case, let's move on to, from a sales and marketing perspective, what would you say are the wins to be had with SEO that's well executed?
Well, the biggest win is revenue, right? So that's always the goal, is that your SEO traffic is going to deliver leads, which are going to deliver revenue. And what I've noticed, we have a lot of B2B, particularly software customers, and the really successful ones, usually about 70% of their inbound leads are coming via SEO. And that the reason that they're so successful is that's scalable. So with paid channels, at some point, like the math stops making sense and you just can't increase budgets anymore. With SEO, the sky's the limit. I mean, you can go and grow off of SEO traffic forever. So some of the really big players, like customers of ours, like Salesforce and Concur, they've grown as a result of driving an enormous amount of volume and lead volume via SEO. And usually that lead volume converts very well. If you talk to sales leaders, they love SEO traffic. They love SEO leads because they convert so well and they're very qualified. So that's really the win I think that we're all going for, is to drive that top line revenue and profitable revenue that grows the company. So I think that's the ultimate win that we're all going for, James, is, how do I get more leads into the pipeline and how do I convert those leads into revenue? And SEO is just a phenomenal channel to do that with.
So what I got from there, I was taking notes. So you said 70% of, was it qualified? How did you define it? Was it qualified leads or 70% of leads? I just want to recap to make sure that we've got that locked down.
70% of either inbound or their overall lead volume comes from SEO. Is usually a scaled software business or a B2B business that's really scaled and doing quite well. They'll have about 70% of their leads coming from SEO.
That's a heck of a return, right? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, you can just imagine, right? We've all touched B2B businesses. If you have 70% of your leads coming organically, almost essentially for free, that company is going to be extremely successful. Huckabye's getting close to that point. We're probably about 60% of our leads are coming via SEO. If you can get into that 70 range and growing, you've got a heck of a business.
Wow. Okay. Well, with that then, what would you say? Do the companies do differently? The companies that get the best results, what do they do differently to everyone else?
It's the priority. SEO is if not from a marketing perspective, is often the number one priority within the organization.
Right.
And so a lot of attention, a lot of money is put towards it, a lot of content is put towards it. It almost needs to be part of like the company's culture. I know it was at Overstock. I know that's not a B2B company, and it's become part of Huckabye's culture, but it can do stuff like not just drive volume, but it can change business models. One example is like keyword research. Instead of coming up with an idea for a product and sort of then going out and marketing and sort of shoving it down people's throats, what if you research what are people looking for when it comes to various pieces of software or technology that isn't being solved for today? And then you build your product related to, there's already demand, meaning people are searching for it, and now we're just fulfilling that demand. It's a much easier path to success. So I've seen companies even go that far where their product strategy comes from SEO. So that's really becoming part of the culture of the company. But you just see it as a higher priority. For some reason, especially in the B2B world, SEO is not seen as important as it is in B2C. In B2C, every big brand, Amazon, eBay, Overstock, they all grew on SEO. So if you're not doing SEO, it's just, you're good luck. You just can't compete. In B2B world, though, you can get pretty far with a strong sales team and buying leads. But at some point, SEO needs to become a main priority and part of the company culture. Otherwise, you just aren't set up to be able to scale as big as you probably would like to. So I'd say the priority of it, and it at some point becoming, something that almost every, I love the title of the podcast, that it needs to be a team sport. It really does need to be a team sport where everybody's on board and everybody realizes the value and is pushing in the same direction.
I love your quote then. If you're not doing SEO, then good luck. That's a very polite way of putting it. Spot on.
Yeah.
Well, in terms of what the future holds, what is on the way, which marketers really need to be in tune with right now and taking note of?
So two things. One is there's a huge Google algorithm update coming in May. It's called the Google Page Experience Update. They've never talked this far in advance about an update. Usually with a Google update, they just do it. They don't even tell you that it's coming. They've talked about this one for over a year. They actually delayed it because of COVID, because they thought it was going to affect the economy in some wild ways. But it's called the Google Page Experience Update, and it's all about page speed. So Google's finally just fed up with slow websites. It's bad for them in terms of them crawling, and it's also bad for user experience. And so they're just going to, if you don't have a fast website, good luck. It's
Right.
going to be, they're going to get penalized and you'll sort of disappear. So in terms of what's coming out on the horizon, that has to be the biggest thing. There's another thing called dynamic rendering, if you want to get into, James, that's already live and very important. But in terms of what's coming down the tracks and what's happening in the future, it's all about this page experience update. And these companies that are very good at SEO, like I was describing earlier, they're all over this. They're doing stuff specifically. Huckabye's built a product just for this page experience update. I mean, it's going to be a big one. And you'll see a lot of people scrambling in May if they don't do something now.
Right. In terms of speed then, how fast is fast? How do you measure or benchmark it?
So Google uses the way that Google measures page speed is through Chrome browsers all around the world. So Chrome browsers, as you browse websites, if you didn't uncheck the box that says share information with Google, your browser is actually feeding information to Google about how fast the sites that you're browsing are performing. And that's how they actually figure out how fast these websites are. And they use a tool called Google Lighthouse. And Google Lighthouse scores you on a scale of 0 to 100. 100's very fast. And I think to pass, they literally have like a pass fail as part of this page experience update. And to pass, I think you have to be 70 and above. So the average website on the internet today is 35. So that's a big disconnect. So
Yeah.
sites are going to have to significantly get faster. To see what a fast website looks like, you can go to huckabye.com. I don't want to pitch here too much, but we have a
Yeah.
very fast website. So you can actually click around your own site, then go to ours and click around, and you'll visually see the difference between a slow site or maybe a slow site and a fast site. But yeah, you want to be in that 70 to 100 range using a Google Lighthouse score.
Right. Okay. So Google Lighthouse is a Google product, which I imagine you could Google to find it. Yeah, that would make sense. All right. Christ.
Yep.
No, James, really? Brilliant. All right. So speed, we've covered that. I must admit, dynamic rendering, that does sound cool. I've got to ask about that. What is dynamic rendering, especially since you've given that a bit of a tease right there?
So dynamic rendering is a big change for them. It happened about a little over a year ago. And basically, you can now generate a simpler version of your site. Just like you have a mobile version and a desktop version, you can actually now have a Google version or a search engine version, which is a big departure from them because they'd always say, well, we only crawl the user experience. Now you can actually give them a simpler version. And the reason for that is JavaScript. So JavaScript is now everywhere on the internet. It makes it very hard for them to crawl and understand pages. So they're just saying, hey, give us a dynamically rendered, a simpler version without JavaScript that we can crawl and understand. And so you can do that now. You can actually have, a lighter weight. All the content needs to be there. It needs to be similar, but strip out the chat box, strip out the stuff that they don't care about, and give them just a simpler version. And that allows them to crawl more pages when they come and visit you, to understand more of the site. It's a big change for them, and we've taken advantage of it. We have a dynamic rendering product. There's other products out there. You can do it yourself. It's somewhat challenging, but that's a big change for them, and one that's you can take advantage of. So if you do have one of these, very big, complicated sites that's difficult for Google to understand, and they don't tell you, right? If it's difficult for them to understand, they don't come knocking at your door and say, hey, your site is terrible. We need this to be easier. But if your site is large and slow and has a lot of JavaScript, then taking advantage of dynamic rendering is an awesome opportunity. And we see companies have a ton of success taking advantage of it.
That's a nice one. I like that. Okay, cool. I'll definitely get you to recap that at the end of basically. I think it'd be really nice to give the viewers and listeners a checklist of what they should be aiming for, and also what they need to have their sit down with their SEO team and say, right, have we definitely got this, and this covered? And yeah, by the sounds of it, dynamic rendering will be one of them. I'll let Lee. I got a question. She would like you to spell your company name, please. I think she's had trouble. Go for it.
Sure. Yeah, HUCKABUY, Huckabye, and the end of it's BUY, like buy a product.
Boom. There you go. Okay, I hope that solves the problem. Well, in terms of looking to the future, what else, if anything, should marketers be preparing for? Although I feel like you've given us a really healthy selection right here. Is there anything else on the horizon that we need to consider?
Yeah, one that I think about a lot is this voice search. I kind of think that the voice search is going to become more, especially as you kind of watch kids interact with the internet, the fact that they're so comfortable using voice search usually gives that heads up that this is coming. And so I don't even totally know how to think about it or give your audience the right direction here, but you do have this behavior happening where people are searching more by asking questions. And so some successful sites now and going into the future have a lot of like Q&A type sections. So thinking about that is a good way to prepare for when voice search really hits. A Q&A section around the site in various locations with structured data on top of it does set you up for good success when voice search becomes a bigger thing.
Perfect. Right. Paulina Carafa. Let me do your name properly, right, Paula? Paula Kafara Rajan is finding this really helpful. Thank you, Paula. Many great insights. Thank you, Jeff. All right. Well, if you're ready, then in that case, let's go for the big one, which is what would you like for the viewers and listeners to have as core takeaways for today's show? And with that, what they should be doing immediately after watching, I guess.
I think their takeaways should be that obviously, I think hearing me talk about SEO it's a different game here in 2021 than it was even 5 years ago. So the biggest takeaway is just for them to have gained some knowledge about what these concepts are, that page speed is important, that structured data is important, that dynamic rendering is important, and that we're not just in the world of keyword stuffing and writing content. Google's now giving you technical means to be successful. Content and inbound links and all those things are still very important. But if the site's clunky and it's hard for them to understand, you can have the most content in the world or the most links in the world, and you're just not going to get rewarded for it. So it is a team sport. It takes a content team. It takes PR and publicity to get inbound links. But these technical pieces are still very important and sometimes can get ignored or pushed to the side. And you just can't be as successful in 2021 as you'd like without these aspects, these boxes checked. So that'd be my biggest takeaway is the game has changed. It's 2021, get on board.
Brilliant. Jeff, thank you so much for today. I think I know this has been very, very insightful and helpful, sincerely. Yeah. So, joining us all the way from Park City in Utah, Mr. Jeff Atkinson, thank you very much for today.
Thank you, James. That was really fun.
It's a pleasure. Thank you. And if you've enjoyed watching, then please do, web address on screen, subscribe to the show if you haven't already at the414.net for all previous episodes, as well as all potential subscription options. You can get it on your mobile phone with our video or audio podcast, or indeed, honest to goodness, our weekly email that we've gotten really stuck into with giving you a weekly update for what is on the show this week and what you missed the week previous. Yes, Arlette, thank you so much as well. Yeah, Arlette and Paulina, new friends of the show. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. All right, well, the 414 each week for you as a professional B2B marketer, whether you work in-house or at an agency, and it's so that you can directly expand and enhance your professional knowledge every week as an awesome B2B marketer so that you can do better in your role and deliver even better results for your company. And you do that by listening to some of the greatest and most interesting minds in B2B marketing, wherever they are in the world, but they're on here on the show. Excellent. Well, have a great Friday morning and afternoon, depending where in the world you are. My name's James Rostance, and I'll see you here same time next week.